Special guest in conversation this week. Seen him loads of times, half chatted to him, always wanted to talk to him, so I thought if we get him in now as he creates a new ride for Thorp Park, and he's back on tour for about the 7th time, I think, Derren Brown. Is it? Is it 7th?
It's the 7th show, but it's like the 14th year of doing it, because each one's a couple of years. So it's been a while. I love it though.
You do love it, don't you?
Yeah, I really do. I really do.
Is that every magician obviously wants to perform in front of people because that's where you get the high from. The high from you is you're just not performing, you're involving, which is a little bit more complicated.
I hope so. I think it's a show. I think historically, magic shows and magicians have been very much about the performer, about somebody going, "Hey, look at me, aren't I great?" And of course, it's a bit unavoidable if you're standing up and doing a show. But as much as possible, this is a show. This is a show, and they always have been about the audience more than they are about me, the performer. I think that's a good thing with magic, because I think magic can be, it can be one of those things that you might like a magician for a while, but after a while they can become a bit annoying. They become those figures you love to hate, because magic's one of those things that the really interesting stuff you normally can't talk about, because it's the methods.
Yes.
So magicians, so they sort of act interesting, or they act compelling, because they can't really talk about the compelling stuff, and after a while people see through it. So I've always tried to involve people and sort of play to people's intelligence rather than kind of insult it, which does happen sometimes.
Yes,
yeah.
I find it impossible to do as an interview, because there's so many things that I know that we can't talk about because nobody else knows about them, and it sounds as though you're having a private conversation, because magicians talk about some really dull things, people that you've never heard of, different things you can do, so you have to kind of do it so that people understand what you're talking about. And you're right, magic went through a period when it was kind of, it's a magician again, and it became tedious. It became a bit boring. It needed reinventing. You started off doing sort of the usual card stuff. So were you a street magician?
I was a close-up magician I started off as a hypnotist, actually. That's how I started. And then because I didn't really want to make my living, making people prance around on stage, I only did that where I could do it the way I wanted to do it, which hopefully was a more sort of grown-up approach to it. So I would do that sometimes, but my main living was coming from doing close-up magic, so around tables in restaurants and people's parties and that kind of thing.
Which is actually not a bad living, is it?
No, I loved it. I had a gig a week, and I spent the rest of my time just poodling around dreaming up tricks, and it was very nice.
And did you learn from a book? Did you go to Davenport? Who were the magic shops around? The first book on magic I saw was Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic. Right. It was quite a big, fat book, and I got it from a Remainder bookstore in Bristol, where I was living, and that really started it off for me. And years later I discovered there was a whole underground network of magic shops and magic dealers and things like that, and now, of course, lots of DVDs and whatever on YouTube, I'm sure. So it's changed a lot, but at the time, it was a magic book. But I'd already, by that point, the hypnosis had sort of, that was my first love, and that's how I got into that whole world, and that really came from books that I, borrowed or stole or found, or anything I could read. But more difficult then, because there wasn't an internet to to get all this stuff from. No, I mean, the internet changed everything, especially for magicians. You can now order from America, and you can have it FedExed over in a few days.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. So when they have magic conventions, and I love going to them, you think, I've seen that. I bought that last year. And it's only now are people seeing stuff. So you do that. You must have been a rather odd-looking character, Cape, I believe.
Yes, Cape.
Which you've still got.
I think I do have it. Yes, I think I do.
Hidden somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I think I was like a lot of people that get into magic. You're an attention seeker. It's the quickest, most fraudulent route to impressing people, isn't it? So you do it if you don't feel very impressive. So that was a kind of motivating factor. So I think as part of that, I did kind of dress in this sort of extraordinary way. I had quite long hair. I think I had a drop earring at one point as well, big boots and a cape. I think in my mind, I looked like a sort of philosopher poet, but I was more along the
Oscar Wilde kind of character.
Yeah, I was more the kind of gay leisure pirate.
Wandering around, doing your close-up magic once a week, which is nice, and then so you can do that, but then eventually you must hit a thing and you think, it's very nice this, but I'm doing the same thing all the time. You tend as soon as you've got an act, you tend to stick to it. I've been out with magicians before, and I said, you should buy this, and they go, I wouldn't use it. I'd never use it, whereas I just collect. So, of course, I go mental for things.
Yeah,
and I'll see something, you go, got to have it. And then you look at it, you go, right, that's okay, I bought it now.
Yes, it's a very collectible business. There's so many gizmos and tricks and things you can buy. I sort of don't do so much of that now, and I think you're right. You do sort of end up with a kind of an act and a clear sense of what suits your style. I think that is important, and not to get too seduced by the wealth of shiny tricks and things that are available. I think if you kind of discover your approach and what fits you as a person, and for me also the fun's always been dreaming up my own things. I mean, from day one, that was always the joy of it. You kind of almost start with wouldn't it be great if, and then you work out how to do that.
Right.
That's
so you set yourself a scenario, and then you go, right, so if I wanted to do that, how am I going to achieve that?
Yeah, and I think it's a much more interesting creative starting point than just buying a trick off the internet.
Exactly. Well, I mean, look at somebody who was on the television only a short while ago doing a packet trick that was out ages ago called Cartoon, and he does it on television. You go, this one was out years ago, and all of a sudden all the dealers start reselling Cartoon. Where you flick the code, and you think it's nice. At least he gets people interested in magic. And that I suppose is the good thing. Turning point for you would have been year 2000, wouldn't it? I would have thought. Television programme. Television, of course, then opens you up to a huge audience. Prior to you, David Blaine, I think, had pushed the boundaries of magic, doing something a little bit different from the usual card tricks.
Yes, absolutely. I think pre-David Blaine, so this is kind of the era of Paul Daniels, and before him, David Nixon. It had a very different feel. What Blaine, and obviously David Copperfield and so on, at that other sort of that other level, where Paul Daniels had been, as you all know, had been totally revolutionary in terms of the David Nixon era. Before him was quite a sort of formal approach and a very sort of tuxedoed approach to magic. Paul Daniels then brought in he'd had that whole experience of working men's clubs and brought a lot more comedy into it. So that was utterly revolutionary. And every sort of every generation or so, there'll be a big revolution in magic. And Blaine's revolution was to make it, brought it out on the street. And although street magic is something that's always existed, this was taking close-up magic out onto the street and putting the focus on people's reactions, and it created a very real sort of documentary feel, which has sort of been regenerated again, I think, with some Dynamo and others. I don't have a TV, so I don't really watch TV magic anymore.
You don't have a television?
No, I don't have one.
Have you ever had one?
I had one for a bit when I was a student.
Ridiculous question. How do you survive without a television?
I read.
Is there something missing in your life, Derren? Is this some conscious thing? I know that they did an experiment years ago where they went to a village and they said, right, let's find out. And they took all the televisions away. Within 6 months, 3 of the families are divorced. People were having breakdowns. People had turned to drink and everything. And you think, just for the television? I couldn't live without this. Seriously. Do you have a computer?
I have a computer, and I do have I have a little sort of a cinema set up, so I can watch movies, which I love. I don't think I could do without that, but not
but you wouldn't
TV,
watch TV for TV's sake?
No.
Wow.
Never really. Yeah, no, and I know it can be annoying, kind of people say, I don't watch television, as if it's something to be
evil box in the corner.
Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. I've never really. I don't know. It just doesn't appeal.
Do you know? I thought you'd. But
people don't nowadays. People just watch stuff on the.
Yes. Well, you watch
the
it
internet
on your telephone
when they want. Yeah, I know. Who watches TV? I don't know. I probably shouldn't say that because.
Lord, you're going to attract a whole new set of people to the new show. These people coming now who go, he hasn't seen television in years. Thinking now, this is really strange. We're now delving into something very dark and sinister.
Yeah, I'm always shocked by the people that know. I'll go abroad and a lot of people will know me from YouTube, and you'd expect a few people would see that, but actually that seems to be every bit as popular way of being seen as
yes, and probably by more actually, because if I want to see something, I'll type in Derren Brown on YouTube, and I can get that. I can get all the information up anyway. Millions of pieces of information on you. You only got to type in your first name, and up comes everything.
It's a good first name for that.
Good first name, isn't it? Yeah. That was clever. Were you actually christened Derren?
I was christened Derren. Yes, I grew up mostly being called Derren. A lot of people still do call me Derren, but not.
It's a bit annoying because it's not your name.
It's not my name. No, but a not a very good name for performer, Derren Brown. It's only one syllable, but it's quite a difference, isn't it? So
yes, Derren Brown, you see, makes it. You have to do the emphasis to make sure it sounds Derren, not Darren.
Yes,
which is better. So
I've got used to people get it wrong all the time.
Do you always correct them, or?
No, I don't mind. It's just a vowel.
So. Yeah. 2000, you get your first break.
Yes.
You get the first television break. And that is make or break time, really, for anybody. No matter what you're doing, that's that golden opportunity. Did you grasp it with both hands? Yeah, I mean, I've never had any, genuinely never had any ambition at all. I think it's very important to be in the moment with whatever you're doing. And the key thing should be whether what you're doing at this point is fun or interesting, and I had that even as a student, and afterwards when I spent a couple of years, I was signing on for a bit, trying to get it together as a magician, and even then it was only ever about, am I enjoying this at the moment? Is my life as I'd like it to be? And we get fed a very vertical model of happiness, don't we? That we should always be looking forward and striving for something which is somewhere out there in the future that we're always working towards, which incidentally is a hangover from Christianity, that idea of the kingdom of God, that you suffer now and your reward is in the future. That was a brand new idea that they brought in, and although we've dispensed supposedly with religious thinking since the Enlightenment, we still carry around that structure. But there's also a horizontal model, which is I read somewhere a nice thing of a frog on a lily pad, that you spend some time on a lily pad, and then if you get bored after a while sunning yourself there, you can move to another lily pad and sun yourself there for a bit. It's every bit as valid and actually more conducive, I think, to happiness, because you're in the moment as opposed to constantly looking forward to something that, of course, never really arrives. So I've never had any ambition, genuinely, and even now I've got no desire to, take over America or do this or do that. It's only really ever been about, is this particular project fun and interesting, and that's served me well. So, yes, of course, it was nice to be offered a TV show. Of course it was, because that was fun, but there wasn't a desire to be on TV for its own sake or anything like that. All right, quick break. More from Derren Brown after this. Special guest in conversation. He's back with a brand new show called Miracle. He's also been very heavily involved for some years down at Thorp Park with coming up with a new experience, and that's the best way I can describe it. They're always looking for new ways to go forward, new experiences for people to take on board, and so they have these discussions with Derren Brown, and it comes to fruition. It opens in March next year. Certainly spring next year, yes, I think so. Somewhere around then, yeah. What is it? Yeah. Well, it's being kept under wraps at the moment, which is typical for me. I can never really talk about these projects because they're always shrouded in secrecy. But it's very exciting. This is, so I won't give away exactly what it is, but it's their biggest investment to date, which is amazing when you're just sitting around having a laugh and coming up with ideas and go, oh my God, I can't believe Thorp Park want me to come up with an attraction. So, yes, it's their biggest thing to date in terms of investment. Something like 1,000 people have been involved in making it. 3 years of working out what this is. So this isn't just something I'm putting my name to. This is something I've come up with. Is it a ride? It's an attraction. It's like a 13-minute experience. Right. So it's not a roller coaster, for example. Okay, right. It's more involved than that. And it's genuinely a first of its kind in the world. There isn't really anything like this. I think it'll be, and I understand it will be the future of a lot of theme park rides and so on, so that may be the way it's going to go, but for now it's an absolute first. I'm so excited about it. It's so nice just to have the remit of just provide a thrilling, fun experience. That's a lovely thing. So yeah, very, very excited about it. And it's all purpose built? Yes, they're building it at the moment. I went on Google Earth and I could see the site. You can actually we can see the site where it's where they're building it. And do we know what it's going to be called? Yes, we do. Can't tell. You can't say, not yet. Not yet. It's so annoying. I know. I'm sorry, but it's like having, as I said at the beginning of the conversation about magic, when there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I'm forbidden from doing so because I'm. The funny thing is, people sort of say if you become a member of the Magic Circle or whatever else, they say, oh, you're not supposed to give away secrets. I said no. The reason that you don't give away secrets, why would you learn to do something, show it to them, and then tell them how it works? Yes, there's a famous quote in magic about a magician guards an empty safe.
And it's a nice idea, isn't it? The reason why you guard the secrets is not because they're the most phenomenal and compelling secrets. It's because they're so pedestrian and disappointing that you don't want to burst the bubble.
I remember Muhammad Ali went on American television, and because of his religious beliefs, he showed them a trick. And they went, oh, that's amazing. He went, oh, it works like this. And he showed them on American television. I remember thinking, I used to hate The Masked Magician, because I think, don't be so silly. Why would you want to kill people's livings? People still do it to some of these old methods. But, magic's moved on. It's some of it's terribly sophisticated. The sort of stuff you do, you tell them it's a trick, but they don't believe you. They think that you've got psychic abilities. And you think you've got psychic abilities.
I certainly don't think I have. I
read an interview. You said you thought you had psychic abilities.
I was being sarcastic if I did say that. No, there's definitely a sort of a bell curve of response, isn't there? You can only really take responsibility for people, the main swell in the middle of how people respond. So at one end, I've got people always saying, oh, it's all stooges, or it's all camera tricks, or it's just all fake, whatever fake magic is. And at the other end of the extreme, people saying, no, you're genuinely psychic, and you're just not admitting it, or you genuinely can talk to the dead, and you're just not, whatever. So those extremes aside, you try, and it is difficult, because it's difficult with what I do, which I like to play with belief rather than that idea of just suspending disbelief. I've always liked the idea of playing with the fringes of, well, how much of this is real? How much am I supposed to believe or not? And my background is in hypnosis originally, so my approach was always a psychological approach. Really, that was the type of magic that interested me most, because it felt like the most compelling sort of magic. For somebody to tell you what you're thinking of felt more interesting than somebody finding your card in a deck, for example. Yes. That just seemed a given to me. So then it becomes about how you sort of maneuver that, and how you, on the one hand, keep a sense of, my ultimate job is an entertainer, so I have to do something that's as compelling and impactful as possible. So you don't want to detract from that by saying, oh, this isn't real, or this is whatever, this is just a trick, or just that. But on the other hand, you want to, there's a certain responsibility that comes with doing something that's on the fringes of that area, because people might take it as, this is evidence for psychic ability, so I'm going to go and see a medium, I'm going to go and try and contact my grandfather that I've lost by seeing a psychic or whatever. So there's plus some of the stuff I'm doing is real. It's based in suggestion or hypnosis. That's sort of real in inverted commas, because then how do you even define what hypnosis is? And some of it's trickery, and as in like magicians conjuring trickery. So there's a lot of blurred grey edges. So for a long time, it's always been a sense of of how you get that line right. There's a kind of an ethical line, and I don't think it's easy, and I don't think there's a formula for it. And your license that you have on stage, I think, is different from on TV. Something about TV where you're just kind of going, whatever you say, people just are just sat in their front rooms absorbing it as fact. And I think that's different than if you're on stage. I think there's a license when you're literally under a proscenium arch in a theatre. I think there's a bit more license there. So it's a constantly moving feast, and a constantly tricky and interesting thing to try and get right with what I do, is how you present it and what framework you put around it, and so on.
So each show that you do, each show that you tour with, and this one starts this year, and then we run into next year, don't we, as well?
Yes, I'm in the West End at the Palace until mid-January, then I got 3 weeks off, and then I got a 5.5-month tour after that, and I just finished a 5-month tour, so there's quite a loss of this.
Wow, working all over Christmas.
Yes, I've never done that before. It should be it'd
be quite nice. Yeah, everybody likes things like that. I have my own little magic show at the Magic Circle on New Year's Day, but that's another story.
Oh, wonderful.
It's only because I just host one. We do it just for sort of to raise some money. But the interesting thing about your shows is that people always talk about them. You garner the press in such a way that they're fascinated by what you do. So each time you do a show, you've got to come up with something new. So Andy Nyman, who's very well known to people in the business as an actor and a magician, and Andrew O'Connor as well, who's been producing, I think, television magic shows for a long, long time.
And himself used to be
Young
Magician of the
magician
Year
as well. I know. Young Magician of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. Do you all sit down and you go, right, this is where I said, this one we're actually going to call Miracle.
So we've got to have something that's got to look like a miracle in it. There's got to be some sort of element.
Well, actually, this one was unusual. What tends to happen in the past is I'll be in the middle of touring one show, and I'll get a call from my manager saying, right, we need to give the theatres for the next show artwork and a title ahead of time so they can start advertising to sell tickets, and we haven't thought about what that show's going to be. So in the past, they've generally been fairly generic titles that I've then slightly kind of crowbarred a context in, for the show. So this was different in that I had a much clearer sense of what I wanted this show to be about. It's more driven, this one, by there's a philosophical drive to it and a sense of me genuinely wanting to say something with this show. And the miracle idea was very much part of that from the ground up. So this is in a way more personal and more the title has a much closer correlation to.
Because you were an evangelical Christian a long time ago. Then now you're an atheist.
Yeah, I was a proper happy clappy. Didn't quite talk in tongues. So I was certainly surrounded by people that were being told that if I felt it was silly, and that was the devil telling me, and I should just simply make the noises. It was quite interesting, very interesting.
What age do you realise that you don't want to follow a particular path and you go, actually, I don't quite believe in all this sort of stuff. I'd rather not believe in anything.
Yeah, I sort of grew out of it, if it's all right to say that, around university. I'd only ever really had one friend that was a fellow Christian, so I didn't have a family. There was no sort of pressure to be, to maintain it. So that made it easy enough to sort of, to sort of grow out of it. Plus, I was. First of all, the hypnosis was interesting because I was at university and a lot of Christian students really took exception to it, which I didn't quite understand because I always thought, well, if the mind is the pinnacle of God's creation, then surely exploring the mind is, it's a fascinating thing. Doesn't mean it's sort of bad or evil to look at that. So I couldn't quite get my head around that. It seemed to be more born out of a sort of a fear, and likewise. I could see, I knew how things like Ouija boards and tarot cards worked, how you could create that sort of effect. And I was seeing, certainly the churches I was going to, very much demonising that kind of New Age thing that was very big at the time. So, bit by bit, I was kind of, I had friends that were into, I had a friend who was a psychic healer, and I could see how her how that belief was maintained by a kind of circular logic. And I was thinking, well, I'm sure I'm just doing the same with my own belief. And gradually, I just sort of, I thought, well, I need to make sure that if I'm going to believe this, that it stands up to, some kind of rigorous thinking, that this isn't just sort of intellectual cowardice on my part, which is what it was starting to feel like. So I started reading around more about how the Bible was put together and so on. And then just eventually, it just all sort of really fell apart. And then I had just as much interest in why we say shouldn't believe. I had as much interest then in atheism as I did in belief at the time. That's an easier jump to go from a strong believer to a strong disbeliever. Now it's sort of, I'm not particularly evangelical about either. I just happen not to believe in the same way most of us don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh, don't start that one, please. I really can't go down that route today. So actually,
Loch Ness Monster, are you?
No. I remember watching a film years ago and somebody said, listen, this thing's thousands of years old. What's it eating? There's nothing in there to eat. There's no fish. There's no nothing. Oh, it's hiding in a cave. No, it's not. It's not there. It's a tourist industry. I talked to a magician years ago, a guy called J. Scott Berry. I interviewed him when he came to Vienna. And he came in because I had an interest in magic. And there used to be a very good magic shop in Vienna called Vienna Magic, which is still there. And they do some, it was the best equipped magic shop I'd ever seen. And he showed me a couple of things. And I said, oh, great. I said, did you do that one by doing whatever? And he said, no, Steve, it's real magic. Oh. I didn't quite understand what he was talking about. Yeah. It was as if he sort of really thought that cards morphed into, and he actually believed in the process of it, as opposed to the fact that it was a trick that he'd learnt.
Or maybe he just didn't like have somebody pointing out the method immediately
right.
after he'd done the trick.
Say to me, of course, I understand magic, and it sounds such a naff line, doesn't it? It really doesn't work. Listen, it's going to be a very busy Christmas, very busy, presumably, when they open the ride in Thorp Park, which we can't name or tell you anything about. You'll be down there for the photo opportunity.
Oh, I'll be there at the launch, definitely. Yes, can't wait. I can't wait to get on it myself.
I bet. Oh, right. Oh, it's something you can go on.
Go on, yeah. Go on. You can go on. Or in.
Or in, but we can't tell you anything else. And Miracle opens at the Palace Theatre.
Yes, 11th of November, I think, is the first night through to mid-January.
Excellent. Listen, good luck with that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Very grateful. Thank you. Yes. But even so, I think you're absolutely right to play smaller venues.
Yes, that's right, and more of them, and that actually does benefit the show, because very often, I remember I have done arena tours, and I'm making no bones.